Hey, Saretsky here. As always, a Canadian real estate market update with a particular focus on Vancouver. If you get any sort of value and entertainment out of these videos, all I ask that you hit thumbs up and subscribe. Questions, comments, put those below. A little bit of housekeeping for this week's video. Next week, May 5th at 10 a.m. Pacific time, I will be doing a Q&A live interview with Jared Dillian. You guys don't know who Jared is. He's the author of Street Freak. Used to work at Lehman Brothers. Widely followed in the finance space, really popular guy. I subscribe to his daily newsletter, the Daily Dirt Nap, and I think you'll get a lot of value out of that interview. So if you want to listen in and maybe ask some questions for Jared or myself, there'll be a link in the description below where you can go and register for that webinar on May 5th at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. But this week, I obviously want to touch on the Bank of Canada. As discussed previously, Stephen Poloz's time at the BOC is done. We got the Tiff Macklem. Wasn't really on my radar, to be honest. I think the shoe-in for most people was Carolyn Wilkins, which was Poloz's right-hand gal, so to speak, and she got nixed. But from what I understand about Tiff is that he was there sort of helping the playbook, the 2008 financial crisis playbook. So maybe that had something to do with it. It's interesting, in his opening sort of media interview, he said that he's happy where rates are. He believes that there's no real effect for going into zero or negative interest rates, but he said that it's certainly still in the toolbox. So we don't know if that means that he may enter that toolbox at some point down the road. Again, I think that they won't. I think it would be the wrong decision if they do, but certainly it remains on the table. So that's kind of where we are from the monetary policy aspect of things. Again, you have to remember we are 100% in the financial crisis era playbook, basically on steroids. Now, again, my view of this is that this solves a liquidity issue. This helps solve liquidity by supporting asset valuations, but it doesn't solve or correct the solvency problem. There is still a solvency problem. There's still going to be a rolling wave of bankruptcies, delinquencies, and so the Federal Reserve or the Bank of Canada, they cannot solve that. Again, you can pump a bunch of money into the system to try to support asset holders, ETF holders of junk bonds. You can help them out by maybe not realizing as large of a loss as they should have. Maybe that helps a little bit with the wealth effect and kind of keeps financial markets somewhat churning. But again, you're not going to prevent a business from going out of business. So I think, again, the solvency issue is not being rectified. So, I mean, some of the things I'm just kind of, thinking about in real day terms, real life terms, something to think about. Let's say, you're running a business, a decent size, let's say medium-sized corporation, a business. You end up laying off or furloughing, a lot of your staff. And, as the months drag on, you're trying to stay solvent. And let's just say hypothetically that you do stay solvent. And you slowly start to rehire people, but it's in several months. Like, what are these individuals going to do? They're going to sit around forever and collect their checks? Sure, some of them might. But a lot of them are going to start looking for new lines of work and new jobs. And, maybe they go from, again, one job that paid $60,000 to they find a new one for $55,000. But that company that then tries to get back up on its feet, that laid off all their employees and they're trying to get back on their feet, they've probably lost, even the ones that they want to rehire, they've probably lost a lot of those employees just to new jobs as well. So just the cost and the loss of productivity of rehiring people, it's very expensive to just go and rehire people that don't have experience inside of your company. So people aren't quantifying the mechanisms of how a business runs and the knock-on effects. So it really is just you kind of have to put all the pieces together. And once you start to put the pieces together, you can start to figure out that this is much bigger than just a virus issue. It is an economic issue. And I think that, again, it's going to be around with us for the foreseeable future. Now they're obviously, we hope this isn't the case, but it seems to be that there's more and more work coming out that this virus is going to be with us for the foreseeable future, for potentially even the next couple of years. So how does that change human behavior? How does that change people's confidence in the outlook? Again, speaking of confidence, again, interest rates can be low, but people need to be confident of the future in order to take that kind of plunge, to make large financial decisions. And so this is something that I'm really thinking about, and I think we'll get a better grasp as we move on in the months ahead. But I want to talk quickly on the Vancouver housing numbers. So for example, for the month of April, we have those figures now. Sales were down 40% on a year-over-year basis. So you look at that and you say, well, 40%, that's not that bad, considering, the economy was basically shut down. But when you start to unpack the data a little bit further, this is essentially my job, you realize that we're comparing 40% on a year-over-year basis, but April 2019 was the slowest April in 19 years. So we have already a very weak base effect that we're comparing against, and so what we had was basically, in Greater Vancouver, we had about 1,100 sales for the month of April. That was by far the fewest sales in history, and again, that is probably to expected. I think we all kind of knew that the number is going to come in similar to that, or close to that. To counteract that, new listings fell by roughly 60 to 65%. So that kind of helped create some semblance of stability, at least for pricing. Again, as I've said before, real estate is extremely slow moving, extremely sticky. My general view of the market right now, just judging through sentiment on a day-to-day basis, is that overall there's still some confidence there in the housing market. Overall, there's no rush, panic. But again, I suspect that my personal view, and I know that a lot of the housing market does not share this view today, my personal view is that as people start to figure out the magnitude of this economic impact and how long it's going to take to recover, I think that that's going to slowly start to come into the realization of the average person that really isn't paying attention, that doesn't really understand, economies, interest rates, how businesses actually operate. I think most people are just, probably more optimistic by nature and hoping that, they're just going to get simply rehired. But again, I suspect that's not going to be the case. But one of the things that I think is going to be extremely important for the housing market, and some people, ask me this, and a lot of my work over the last couple of weeks has really just been talking to people in the finance space, economists at banks, people that are running financial institutions. Is one of the questions I think that we need to start to quantify is, well, what the reaction policy, right? So what is one of the things that will help out the housing market? And that's what I said I think it's going to be policymakers' decision to try to do as much as they can to support the housing market. But what does that support look like? So for example, we know that delinquencies are going to be rising significantly. We know that right now people are able to defer their mortgages, over 700,000 so far. But how does that look? Because let's say in 3 to 4 months when your deferral comes up, either you're going to be kind of back on your feet and able to get back into it, or you're going to try to ask for another deferral, or you're going to have to basically go delinquent. And what does that look like? Are policymakers try to give them another 3 months? Do they try to work with the banks to say, well, we'll give you another 3 months so you can get back up on your feet? But they're going to have to make a decision, because on the flip side, you have all these retirees, these boomers that are depending on bank dividends to support their lifestyle. So they're saying, no, you cannot shut off a key source of income for us. So they're going to have to make a decision. You cannot have more mortgage deferrals. You cannot have this continue while at the same time paying out bank dividends. Somebody is going to lose, okay? Somebody is going to lose. It's either going to be the retiree, that their dividends getting shut off, or it's going to be the over-leveraged homeowner or investor that cannot carry their mortgage and cannot get another mortgage deferral. It is one or the other, so I'm kind of curious to see who policymakers ultimately sacrifice. Again, I think this is, I said this earlier, I believe that we're entering a bull market for social unrest. You can clearly see that the gap, the growing divide between the rich and the poor, the wealthy, those who own assets, financial assets, and those who do not, is going to continue to widen. And that's going to create more friction, more social unrest. And so I think you're going to see more and more of that as we move into the future. But again, that's really my concern, is we have, a leveraged consumer here in Canada. They need the support. How much support are they going to get? Is it going to be enough? I mean, for April, we saw Canadian auto sales down 75%. 75%. I mean, that's just, it's a staggering number. Again, this is something that you just really can't model. You cannot quantify. Truly uncharted territories. I mean, I think in the U.S., which again I believe has better balance sheets overall, they went through that deleveraging in 2008. We don't have the official numbers, but forecasts are coming around for a drop of 50%, give or take, in auto sales. So Canada at dash 75. I mean, that looks really bad. But again, you have to understand from the consumer's point of view, what is the incentive? How do you logically, in this kind of environment, how do you logically go out there and say, now I'm ready to make a $50,000, $40,000, $50,000 investment in a new vehicle? To me, the uncertainty surrounding making that kind of large purchase, I just think that the confidence to make that purchase is going to be impacted. Don't get me wrong, auto sales are obviously going to pick up, home sales are obviously going to pick up, but what does the outcome look for the next 6 to 12 months in an environment where we're not sure what the magnitude of this virus is, what the solvency looks like for businesses and jobs. And so that's kind of my framework for understanding things right now. And again, we'll see, continue to banter, because I think this is an important channel. I'm going to be putting out more. We've talked about this over the last couple of weeks about monetizing a report. I'm actually going to decide I'm going to flip it on the reverse, going to flip it on its head, and we're going to pump out more content, more economic research free. These reports that I put out are going to get even more in depth. I have some people that are now helping me out on that side as well, on the research side as well, and putting some of this together. So we're actually gonna go full tilt on this. We're gonna build it up. I think that it's the right thing to do right now. And I think right now, again, in any economy, is just providing value. And I think the more value that you can provide to people, it comes back full circle. So that's always been kind of my business philosophy. So we're going to flip it on its head, and we're just going to go full tilt at this, because I think right now that these are incredibly important times for households, for household finances. And I think just having access to valuable information, to correct information, because I believe that unfortunately in Canada there's not really a good source of financial information. I think that we're spoon-fed a lot of our info from the big banks, which again, I think there's a conflict of interest there. So we're going to hit this thing full on. So hope that helped. I hope that brought you some value. If it did, hit thumbs up, subscribe. Again, if you want to check out my interview next week with Jared Dillion on May 5th, there'll be a link below where you can register. I think that's going to be a jam-packed interview. It will eventually be posted back onto YouTube as well. But if you want to jump on the live call, ask a few questions, I highly encourage you to do so. All right, take care.